Welcome to the Rewatchers on the Pod. If you're new to the podcast, be sure to check out our first couple of seasons on Game of Thrones and Twin Peaks. But now that we've been to Washington and Westeros, we want to go to the movies. So we're going to change it up and each week for the rest of the year have a guest on to talk about one of their favorite movies or one of those movies that they've just always wanted to see. Week number 1 is going to be Se7en, directed by David Fincher. It's a creepy noir thriller that everyone should see. This is actually a podcast that we recorded last year, but it was a lot of fun and we're excited for you to hear it. The host this week will be Tyler Harris, myself, Mitchell Marshall, and Matthew Marinos, who is the brother of your usual host, Marcus Marinos. So grab your remote, sit back, and let's enjoy the cinema of the silver screen. Hello there. Welcome to Sorry I'm Late, podcast where we apologize for being late to important pop culture things, or not important pop culture things. It really depends how we're feeling that week. My name is Mitchell Marshall. I'm here with your normal host, Tyler Harris.
Hey.
Our third host, Taylor Camp, could not be here this week, but in his place we have an awesome replacement, completing the brother duo, the Marinos brothers, Matthew Marinos. You go by Matthew or Matt?
I go by whatever you want.
That's how I am. I'm a Mitch or a Mitchell. I don't care.
Yeah.
So do people call you both?
Yeah, my family calls me Matthew and everyone else calls me Matt, but I think you're family, so you can call me Matt.
Yes!
Please just call me Matt.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Matthew Marinos.
You heard it here first.
So
There's
it's
another Marinos brother, apparently.
we're releasing.
His name is Mitchell. It would follow
his
the
name
M.
is McKay.
Yeah. Oh, right. Oh,
There's
yeah.
Michael,
Michael.
Marcus, Matthew, McKay.
And now Mitchell.
And now
Wow.
Mitchell. Congratulations. Welcome to the
No,
family.
we learned that I've known his grandpa like my whole life.
Yeah.
Like he's like a family friend I've known my whole life.
That's so weird.
He did catering with my parents' event business.
Yeah, he came up to me like a few weeks ago. He's like, "Hey, you know Robert, right?"
Oh.
I was like, "Mitchell."
John!
Yeah, Mitchell.
He's
That's
getting
his
old.
name.
That's what I'm blaming that on.
Oh yeah, he's really old.
But like through my teen years when I'd work for my parents and I'd work with him, he was a very fond, kind human being.
Oh, he's the best.
But now he thinks I'm Robert, which is the name of 2 of my uncles had by the same woman. That's a long story.
What? What?
Yeah. Well, I had a handicap uncle and my grandmother who is a little bit racist, even though she's like full-on Jewish from the Holocaust, been persecuted her whole life. She was like, I guess racist is the word, but she's very prejudiced, and she's like, oh, now that I wasted that name on someone who is handicapable,
No.
she named another son
I hate
Robert.
this story. Oh, no.
I don't know if I should have said that.
I know. I was about to stop you, but I was so
You were the one.
curious.
I was like, we're not going to go on this tangent. It seemed like you really needed to know.
I did. Who, when they hear that there's 2 brothers both named
I
Robert,
know.
doesn't need more
Can
information?
when you edit, will you just clean that up?
I
It
can
doesn't
try.
need- you don't need to delete the whole thing, but or delete the whole thing. Just clean it up. No one.
Let's
I mean,
let's do 3 seconds silence, and then we'll just go back to the Marinos brother bit. There's another Marinos
Sixth
brother. Wow.
Marinos brother.
There's only 5. There's only
Okay.
5 if you're counting your bit. Okay,
Seriously?
great.
Okay, let's go back to
I'm not gonna edit any of this.
you jerk. Let's go back to Matthew. You selected the movie this week. It's one of my favorite directors, or I say that because I really love a couple of his movies. David Fincher. It kind of fits Halloween, but it's not all horror. It's more of this just gritty, nasty detective movie.
It's horrifying.
It's
Oh,
horrifying. It is. But it's not like a jump scare, be worried about what's around the corner movie.
Yeah.
The one that's in there is
Yeah.
real good. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm getting ahead of
Why did you pick Se7en?
Okay, so David Fincher, he is one of my favorite directors, and Fight Club is my favorite movie. One, because I don't want to ruin anything, but that movie was ruined for me before I saw it, and I still fell in love with it.
Okay.
So that like proves something to me.
Yeah,
Like, wow,
true.
this movie's amazing. 2, I've heard and seen so many memes and things about Se7en. I'm like, why haven't I seen this movie?
Yeah.
And so I've seen like the beginning and end, of course. Like of this
Okay,
movie.
yeah. So you knew it was in
Yeah,
the
so
box.
I knew
okay.
what was in the box, right? But I finally wanted to see the whole thing, and I loved it. Like it was so hard to watch
Yeah.
and terrifying. I probably won't ever watch it again.
Yeah.
But like it exceeded my expectations. So
What is your favorite type of movie? Like, does this fit? Are you into the mystery or the detective style? Because that's kind of what I want to call it noir-y, but it is. It has some elements.
It's got
to
some
that.
noir elements
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I actually didn't really think about it in that light
I
until
thought about
watching
it
it
because
this
of you, because I
time.
know you
No,
like
that's
noirs.
very
Oh yeah.
no,
So,
I agree.
does this fit your movie brand?
I would say so. I mean, like, I love the very, very dark, serious mystery type movies. I mean, I love Christopher Nolan. He's also one of my favorite directors, and like all of his movies have the same feel as well. I mean, like, of course, you get different variations with different styles, right? But I would say my favorite like type of movie is the one that like just gets you enthralled, like you are in the story. And I think that's why Se7en, I really enjoyed it, because like they involved you. They were talking to the audience most of the time without like you realizing it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love Christopher Nolan as well, because like you're so enthralled in his movies, and the cinematography, just everything about Christopher Nolan is incredible. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a certain type I would say, but there is a vibe I go for.
Yeah.
Quality tones, and that's when I first saw David Fincher. I'm pretty sure I saw Social Network before Fight Club. I'm trying to think. I saw the pilot of House of Cards probably around that same time, actually, which he directed, and I actually felt his similarities. It was weird to feel them in this movie because it's completely different, and it's shot different. It's obviously not a Sorkin script, but it was kind of fascinating to see ways he's grown or changed. Clearly, because I've seen a few of his movies over time now. I did learn that like I'm in love with Social Network, and I know a lot of people think that's one of the best movies of the century, so I'm not alone in that. But I think it's the combination of David Fincher's intensity and tone and style mixed with Aaron Sorkin's writing. Like that is my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So like when you talk about the consistency that he and Christopher Nolan have, I totally feel that, because I like Christopher Nolan, but there's something. There's never anything missing. I always fully enjoy his movies, but I'm like, I wonder if he collaborated with the right person, if he could really hit my sweet spots too, because I know how much I enjoy him. So it's like enjoying Fincher. I wonder if he was paired with the right people, which on occasion, he really hits the mark with. He did existing IP, and then he's done now original IP. He did Batman, and now like things like Interstellar or Inception. I think it's really cool to see those tones shift for directors over time.
Yeah. I think that. I think Fincher is like one of those people that for me, like I think you kind of nailed it. I really love his style, and if the right person like adds to that, then it becomes really magical. I think Se7en is incredible. Like we'll just have to talk about this. Like some of the way that he shoots things, like Fincher in particular, like the way that he views individuals and humanity is really gross and like also really incredible, because I think I guess I'll give the plot for Se7en, and then we can kind of get into specifics. So Se7en follows, I have their names written down because I totally forgot them. Somerset and Mills. Somerset is played by Morgan Freeman, and Detective Mills is played by Brad Pitt. Somerset is retiring in a week.
7 days.
Yeah, 7 days, which is interesting. And then Mills comes in to kind of study under him for that time, and eventually replace him. And during that time, they begin to investigate these murders that it turns out there's a serial killer who is killing people based on the 7 deadly sins. And that's it. That's kind of the plot of Se7en. It goes some insane places. But I think the coolest thing about this movie is that even though it's like there's a lot of very like gory, gross crime scenes that you see in this, like I think it's really well shot, because there are times when he's very unafraid to hold on certain things, but then also doesn't show you other things. And I think that's like a really good sign of restraint in a filmmaker, and knowing what he needs to show you and what you need to see and what you can remain hidden. But besides all that, the fact that to me this movie is really if I was to pick the hero of this movie, it's Somerset. Like, he is the one that goes on a journey, and it's not as big a journey as, like, I feel like we're accustomed to seeing in other people, but it's so cool. It's so important, like, the journey he goes on. But yeah, I guess what were your, like, impressions, like, from going through this the first time, like, on character or whatever?
No, I was actually thinking a lot about that. Like, David Fincher, he never shows any of the murders actually taking place. They're always afterwards, right? You see the aftermath of the murders, and it's like almost like every shot is a painting. You know, I mean, he's known for planning out everything very specifically. Yeah. Has a very specific way of doing things. And talking about, like, character development, I noticed that like Brad Pitt, his character at the very beginning of the movie was very excited and very ready to, like, he's like, oh, I'm in this new city, like, I'm the new detective, I'm gonna be ready to take over. And then, like, of course, like, Morgan Freeman, he's like, yep, retiring in a week. I love how it's like the, like, typical buddy cop, like, duo, like, I'm retiring in a week. Like, I'm surprised Morgan Freeman didn't die, like, a day before he retired, right?
I mean, the script was originally Lethal Weapon 5, but then they thought it was too crazy, so they...
That's right, not many people know that. I forgot.
Yeah, that's a little known fact.
But...
And it's subversive in that way, because their arcs don't take place the way you think. Some of the back and forth where, like, Morgan Freeman has this idiot noob face that he gives Brad Pitt a lot, but it's pretty quick that the relationship changed, and he almost, like, pities him. He meets the wife, and he wants to like help them. Yeah. And it's also subversive in the fact that I thought there was going to be a rhythm to these murders, and you also think it's like, okay, well, now we want to catch up and catch him before, like, that's how these work. It's like, we got to figure out his next move before he doesn't get there. But you never feel like they're even really shooting for that. And once they kind of figure out it's a thing, they want to find out who he is and stop more murders from happening. But it's never like we've got to figure this out, and, like, here's when the next murder is going to take place. We're going to be there. Yeah. Like, they find his apartment pretty early, and you see how, I think it's interesting what you said about restraint, about not showing everything, because that's a case where, like, the opening credits are nasty, and they show this obese, destroyed man early, but then they don't show certain things that you know are there. Yeah. And it messes with you, and I like the way he subverts the relationship, the rhythm that you expect with the murders, because it's not like, you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 happening every so often. And I just think that goes with what you said with these two characters, and what you expect is not what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I love how they're in this unknown city. I mean, they never talk about.
I know, I Googled this so
where
many
they
times.
are.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, are they in, like, New York? Why is it raining so much? What the hell? Like, what's going on?
Which is funny, because I didn't realize until, like, the second time I watched it, they never mentioned it. I remember after watching it, I was like, oh, it's Chicago. It takes place in Chicago.
Interesting.
Which is such a weird... I don't know why my brain, like, foisted that onto this movie, but that's... I still am like, this is Chicago. This is Chicago
it's
to
obvious.
Me. Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know.
But it's like, because it hints, like, Morgan Freeman when he's in the taxi, he's like, where are you going? Like, far away from here. Like, it just hints that this is a terrible place to live.
Yeah.
You know, but, like, Brad Pitt, he's super excited to start his new job. And then Morgan Freeman always talks about, what is it? He says apathy all the time. Like, that is a common theme, how he describes the city, how he describes people in general. And then Brad Pitt, like... There's just the talk there in the bar where he's like, I disagree with you. Like, I can't do this. But then, at the very end, they switch. Yeah. Like, that that writing is incredible, because it's like, it's not fast. It's a very slow decline for Brad Pitt. And it's like, it's Morgan Freeman developing that, like, I don't know what you call it, sympathy for people. Yeah. You know? And it was beautifully written. I think they did a good job.
No, it's... that, I think the two moments for me that define Morgan Freeman's character are early in the movie, like, after they found the first body, and he's still like, well, I'm still out of here. Like, I'm not doing this. I don't want to get involved. Yeah. And then when the chief comes in and brings him, like, the evidence of, like, the floor shavings or whatever, they have this conversation where Morgan Freeman's like, someone, like, stabbed someone in the eyes last night. And there's like for no real reason, and the guy's like, oh yeah, I read about that, and Morgan Freeman's like, I just don't understand this place, like, and he's done, like, he's done at that point. And then the very last thing that's said in the movie, one of my favorite parts of this movie that I found out is actually David Fincher did not want in the movie, but they added, is the voiceover at the end. So originally this movie was just going to end with Mills shooting John Doe, and just cut to black. But the voiceover that Morgan Freeman has at the end, where he talks about the quote, oh man, I can't remember who he says.
Was it Hemingway?
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway. That talks about this world is a good place and it's worth fighting for. And he says, I agree with the second part of that.
Yeah.
And it's like that to me is the journey that he takes.
Yeah.
You know, from like this, I'm just done to I still am gonna fight.
Yeah.
Even though it's a
not
terrible
a fine place to be.
Yeah.
He's like, I still need to fight for it.
Yeah.
I love that. What did I remember noticing something like that, where what did I read something or saw something where basically the city, for the most part, because you don't know who the murderer is, like they don't see it or they don't see who it is. You don't see Kevin Spacey.
Right.
Spoilers, by the way. Hope people understand.
Oh yeah, that's we just don't care really.
Like the city itself is the antagonist, right? Because it Brad Pitt's wife. I always forget that actress's name. What's her name? Gwyneth Paltrow. Great. She does a great job.
Pepper.
Yeah, she's really good in this movie.
Like everyone is against the city. Everyone hates the city, but then as soon as Kevin Spacey is on screen, you're like, that's a face I can hate. Like that is someone that needs to die.
Such a good villain.
Like,
He
does such a
he
great
really
job.
was a horrible person.
Yeah, it's it really is. The way that they play with duality in this movie too is really interesting because Mills and Somerset could not be more different. Like you were saying, like Mills is the young, eager to go, and Somerset's this old, just tired dude. And also the way that they investigate is so different because one of my favorite scenes in this movie is just the one of Somerset in the library when he's just looking up Dante's Inferno and all this stuff, and the guards are up playing poker. It's just a great scene. That to me is such a good scene. Stuff. Because Fincher does such a great job of throwing huge importance on really mundane things, and then the next time he basically does all this research, leaves this envelope from Mills on Mills' desk, and the next time you see Mills, he's walking out in just this pouring rain, gets in his car, and he starts trying to read Inferno and just freaks out. And he's so pissed that he has to read. And then immediately this cop shows up and gives him this envelope that has Cliff's Notes for all of those in there. And it's just such an interesting thing to me. That's such a great. There's so many great character things just strewn throughout this that really give you a sense for who these characters are, because the dialogue does feel very noirish to me.
Yeah,
it's heightened
and it's bad sometimes. But not in a horrible way, in a noir way. The initial dinner with them there's some awkward exchanges, but I'm like, that's kind of realistic and kind of just ugly in a way that works in noir. Talking, and Brad Pitt has some one-liners early on that are super predictable and oozy, and I think that actually sets up when things get more serious and more interesting, the way he changes. I think earlier on, him being dumb, him having his really wrinkled shirts, I think it actually works.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines in this movie is when they find the quote from Merchant of Venice that's about removing a pound of flesh, nothing more, nothing less, and Somerset just goes, Merchant of Venice, and Mills' line is just oh, I didn't see it. And, it's the way that he's just talking about it as if it's a show or a movie, something. It's just it's such a funny thing. And then later when there's another quote that's left, and it's by Marquis de Sade. And when he's reading it, he says Marquis de Sade, which is this movie was made in the mid-90s, so it's
he's Sean Hunter from Boy Meets World.
He kind of is,
the same stuff. That's ridiculous. That's great.
But yeah, it's just that stuff works really well, and I think there are some great moments of humor in this that are very subtle but good. And also, probably my other favorite scene is the one with Gwyneth Paltrow and Morgan Freeman at the diner. Yeah. It's a really heartbreaking scene to watch, knowing what's going to happen, but also gives you a really deep insight into Somerset. Because she tells him that she's pregnant, and she hasn't told David Mills yet, and she's not sure what to do because she doesn't want to be a burden. They just moved to this city, anyways. And Somerset tells this story about how this woman that he was in a relationship was pregnant, And when he found out, he went to work the next day, and all he felt was fear that he'd never felt before. And he convinced her to not keep the baby, essentially. I don't know what that means, if they put out for that. I don't know. But the line at the end, he says, I know I made the right decision, but every day I wish I'd made the other one. Like, that's such an incredible line, and like an incredible insight into that character.
Yeah.
And man, yeah, it's this movie's so well written, I feel like.
It's very subtle. The entire movie is very subtle, and I know that there was a lot of pushback by David Fincher to change things because everyone was requesting him to change a lot of things. He's like, no, this is what I want, because I mean the film industry nowadays is like, you have to. They just shove everything in your face. Like, do you get it? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to do here? Look at it. It's a shiny ball.
Yeah.
But David Fincher in this movie, like, there was a quote that Kevin Spacey said that. I think I wrote it down, where he said, he said something about, like, tapping people on the shoulder isn't enough anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer. And I honestly think he was alluding slightly. I don't know if this is true, but it just reminds me of the film industry itself. Yeah. He's like, you know what? Like, people need to be hit in the face with things in order for them to understand. But David Fincher's more sophisticated. He's like, I'm just going to give them this, and if they can pull what they want out of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was well done.
This does such a better job. I know it doesn't have as deep things apparently to say as The Shining, which we talked about last week, but I think it does a great job of he puts things out there and he lets you fill in the blanks, and he lets some bigger ideas float and lets you pull things from them.
Yeah.
And maybe I was just more mindful of that right after watching The Shining and deciding that it had deeper things to say. But I thought it was really interesting to watch the character interactions, to get these little hints at Somerset's past, and at the idea of this guy's maybe religious fanaticism and the things that he was doing, and decide. And that's a little relevant today because religious fanaticism is a problem in society right now. And so I think it does a good job of floating these bigger ideas, but letting you see it as art and make your own determinations. And so Fincher, the only movie he directed before this was Alien 3, which
is awful.
I have not
seen.
It
is a bad movie.
And he apparently was very turned off to directing. He's just like,
it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a movie made by someone who was having fun making a movie. Because it's sure as hell not fun to watch.
He does some good, like, and you can tell he's trying things still. Like, there's a lot. I think the chase scene is fantastic.
Yeah,
because it takes you through some weird places, and it changes scenery. It's well paced. You don't really know what's going on. You almost expect Morgan Freeman to pop out and find the killer, and it has some tropes, but it's a little long and nasty, and you never quite see the killer until the very end, when he's just got a gun to his head, and you know that he wants to play a bigger game, which I think this was influential in the way some serial killers are treated in film. Not that some of that might not come from real life, but I just think if David Fincher did a chase scene now, he would do it very different from the way he did it in this movie. And so it's interesting to see that he came from Alien, wasn't sure he wanted to do it. There is a thing in the Wikipedia page about how he was sent the script with the head in the box, even though the studio didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted a more traditional ending, and he's like, no, it's got to be this way. And I think they were
originally going to put his dog's head in the box instead of his wife's head. Which is like, what is that? What does that show? I'm a serial killer and I killed your dog.
I was in your house and I could have killed your wife, but instead I killed your dog. Now I'm going to prison forever.
Your dog that you keep in this room of newspaper, you terrible dog parent.
Yeah, no, that's awful. Yeah. But yeah, I think kind of in relating this to The Shining, I don't think you're wrong. Like, I think the thing that Fincher is more interested in than someone like Kubrick is, I feel like Kubrick's interested in macro ideas.
Yeah.
Like, especially you look at something like 2001, and that is, I don't remember any of the names of the characters from that except for Dave, because that line by Hal, you know what I mean? Like, that's the only name I remember. But that movie is about humanity at large, right? I feel like Fincher is far more interested in the individual, and that's what you get in this movie. Like, it is, and he does leave enough. Like, there's enough in this movie that's so universal and so primal in a lot of ways that I feel like you just glom onto it. Like you get it without it being shoved in your face. You know what I mean? And the little things that it does drop, like for me, it's that scene in the diner with his wife that like gives that ending a real hearty punch. Like,
and you have to, because she's mainly in 3 scenes, and then maybe a couple other quick moments he like gets in bed, that sort of thing, and he does a great job at injecting her character throughout that. And Gwyneth Paltrow plays, she has a character type that she does, and I had so many preconceived notions about it. I actually thought they did a really good job at making me care about her, and I could kind of see it coming. I was like, okay, how are these people going to converge? But I loved the ending. As soon as I realized he was making himself out to be Envy, and we should probably talk about the beginning or the ending as a whole.
Yeah.
But it worked for me because the characters. I feel like in Fincher movies, he's not obsessed with making his characters good guys or bad guys, or like in this case, you don't know what to expect from Kevin Spacey. But I don't think he needs to make you love these characters or truly understand them. Like we said, he'll leave holes in their backgrounds. But I think he does a great job at getting you into the head of someone in this situation, but almost not making you invested in this specific person, which makes the ideas work harder because they're not in a specific, here's your story's hero, think of it from his perspective. It's, here's this person, I'm going to give you all of these things, now you decide what's in their head.
Yeah, and I think because he does that, it makes it so much more real. I mean, I heard a quote that David Fincher said. He said something like, most people go to the movies to help realize that life isn't so bad. Well, I make movies so people realize that life is bad. Right. Basically, something like that. I probably butchered it. But, like, I've been listening to so many true crime podcasts, and then I watch this movie, and I'm like, holy shit, this happens. Like, this is real life. And, like, it's because of those connections and because of what he did. Because, like, he doesn't give you so much information on the people, but, like, that's real life. Like, you don't, even, like, your best friends, you, like, don't really know their background too well. Well, okay, there's exceptions, right? But, like, you know, sometimes, like, you don't know your coworkers, your friends, like, he makes you feel like you are in the movie. Yeah. And he's speaking to you, and you're with Mills and Somerset. Yeah, right? Somerset. Yeah. I want to say Somersault. You're with Somersault. But he does a great job of making this like, oh my gosh, like this happened. I'm watching a documentary right now, aren't I?
Right. Yeah. So. And I think that's one of the things, like just the way that he uses the camera throughout this movie it all does feel so calculated. Because I think especially those early scenes, the way he shoots dialogue, and the way that he shoots those characters, like, he's very conscious of times when he separates you from them completely. Like, when they're going into that first crime scene, that shot is from across the street, and they go behind a chain link fence, and it, like, it follows them. You know what I mean? And it does give you this feeling that the next thing you're going to see is not something that you're supposed to see, or that you would ever... You know what I mean?
That's
like,
a good point.
That kind of stuff. And also, like, in the dialogue with the chief... when Somerset is engaged in a conversation, the camera is between the two of them because they have his attention. But there's plenty of that conversation with the chief where he's typing that is shot from back, so it's a 2-shot of them. You know what I mean? And he's talking to the typewriter as the chief is talking to him. You know what I mean? Like, and just those little things, like. I mean, I was really watching for, like, really specific stuff, but I feel like that's the type of stuff that's so small and subtle that it does affect how you intake the movie, whether you notice or not. Like, it's incredible the way that he presents that visual information in a way that supports what's happening physically or verbally. Like, it's really cool.
And that's why, you know, that you felt like there was this documentary element, because crazy things like this happen. And it's interesting that this world is really dirty. That's why it's I wouldn't call it realistic, although I'm sure to some degree it is, but I would say it doesn't feel impossible, but it does feel like you're transported to this just nasty place. Like, even their apartment, which they're like, it doesn't look bad or anything, but it feels realistically lived in, but some of it is almost comic booky in its noirness, and yet it still feels so, like,
just dark.
visual.
Like,
What I'm trying to think of the word like vivacious, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Voluptuous.
Yeah. It's a
everything has a film on it. It feels like everything is grimy. Like I don't want to touch anything.
I wonder if he filtered this because he uses VFX
film,
after
right?
this, and he does that heavily. So
So and that was actually an interesting thing I was looking at too. So the way that they actually process the film stock is like it's not something that they do very much, and they didn't do a lot. But it uses silver.
Oh, I
somehow,
read
and it basically creates more luminosity and also deeper blacks, which this movie was made in '95. It looks incredible.
Oh,
like
so
this
good.
movie has aged incredibly well. Like I don't really foresee a time that this looks.
If you
bad.
told me this was made in 2005, I'd believe you. If you told me it was made like last year, I'd question you. But
because Brad Pitt's so old.
I'm just in general. This feels right. I have some Brad Pitt, but we can go to that after me. I have some.
Kevin Spacey's in it. So
you think about that? Kevin Spacey will never be in another movie again.
Oh my God.
And also like knowing who he is, him playing his character, it makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
And David Fincher knew that. I'm just kidding.
We've done a lot of Kevin. This is
Kevin
our
Spacey.
third or fourth Kevin Spacey movie.
Have we
we've
done
on
3?
this podcast.
I know we did LA Confidential.
We did 21.
And 21, yeah. And this one, yeah, you're right.
And he might have snuck into it.
And what's crazy about this movie is they did not advertise that Kevin Spacey was in this movie.
Which is great.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Which is so smart. Like, all of the movie posters, not even in the opening credits. And then at the very end, Kevin Spacey as John Doe.
Yeah.
How big of a star was he at this point?
I mean, he was pretty... So this came out the same year as Usual Suspects,
Okay.
which he won the Oscar for.
Right.
So, like, he was a known quantity in Hollywood,
How big
for
a
sure.
star was... I was looking at Brad Pitt's filmography. I grew up... Brad Pitt is the most attractive man in the world and a really good actor. That was ingrained in me at some point early. Let's talk about what he did before this. Like,
okay.
And I'll just say ones I've heard of. And so he started acting in '87. Let's say in '91 he was in Thelma and Louise. He was in A River Runs Through It, True Romance, Interview with a Vampire, Legends of the Fall, and then Seven. And I'm sure you've heard of some of these in between. He was in Contact. I did not know.
Legends of the Fall was huge for him in particular.
It was, okay. Because I want to know at what point did he become really important? Because only a few years after this, he does Meet Joe Black in '98. I remember that coming out, and my sister's wanting to see it, and my mom being like, I don't know. And then Fight Club, Being John Malkovich, those are all pretty big. The Mexican, for some reason...
Sex scene in the freaking movie.
That's why my mom was like, I don't know if you should see this.
I remember watching Meet Joe Black as a kid with my parents. And I'm like, I don't think you guys should be watching this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
How do I
I'm
explain
like
what sex
old.
is to my parents?
I'm going to have the conversation with my mom and dad.
Yeah.
Great, Mom, sit down.
Sit that, Mom.
Mom,
Let me
get
tell
over
you
here.
what Joe Black just did to... But Ocean's 11 is 6 years later, and by then he is like known to be a long-time, very famous man. He's married to Jennifer Aniston, who Friends hits its stride about a year after this, and it's like the fourth season or so. And it's just interesting to me to wonder when did Brad Pitt become the most famous? Because he still is he has pretty impressive staying power.
Yeah, for sure.
Brad Pitt, he keeps doing some good stuff.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman. That's three huge
This
names.
was Morgan Freeman's first movie.
He was 16.
He's just always looked like that. Yeah. That would mean when he made Bruce Almighty, he was 20. He was already ready to be God.
And you could tell because he just started drinking. If you watch Bruce Almighty, you can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, can all with his liquor.
He's got all these spots on his face. There's clearly something's happening here.
But yeah, this I thought that was maybe like a really unique thing of them not revealing that. But then I thought of this movie actually does borrow from a pretty rich tradition of you think about Psycho and what that movie is I think the similarity between those two movies is that they're good movies and they don't depend on the twist, but the twist makes them better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think about Signs and Sixth Sense and I honestly haven't watched those movies in a while, but what I remember of them is the twist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't remember a lot of stuff around, a lot of details around it.
Go ahead.
But no, that's good.
I just gonna say this movie does a great job of being like a murder mystery. I don't know, a murder detective movie with the neo-noir elements to it. But it steals a lot from horror movies.
Yeah, for sure.
And like just the nasty murderousness of it. It's interesting. I wonder if we would have followed one of these victims or something. This could literally be shown from another side as a horror movie.
Yeah.
But we also don't get some detail. It leaves out things that why did he? We know why he targeted these people, but is there more to it, or did he just be like, I'm going to go find the most obese guy I can?
Yeah.
And the one jump scare when this guy has clearly been destroyed for years. Like
for
when
a year. That part,
of all the things he did to him, that's the big thing at the ending. I was like, he deserves so. Like I know that the justice system wouldn't do it to him, but I'm like, this guy deserves so much worse. Not just for killing your wife, which by the way he decapitated your wife. You should probably kill him in a better way. Don't give him the satisfaction.
I would just come on, just shoot him in the leg, make him hurt.
Have you seen Law Abiding Citizen?
Bit,
I have not. No.
So Law Abiding Citizen is this. Gerard Butler's wife and daughter get raped and murdered, and then he just absolutely tortures and destroys this guy. And he has this master plan to set off all these things to destroy a lot of things because he thinks the justice system let it down, which it did. And Jamie Foxx is the lawyer that's kind of the problem with the system, but ends up you rooting for him because you don't want to. Anyway, that was way too much background. He tortures the shiz out of this guy, and it details it. And then he kills his prison cell roommate with a steak. He blackmails into them, making him give it this beautiful meal, including steak, and he takes the T-bone out of the steak and kills right in front of a bunch of people. And I'm just like, that's what Kevin Spacey deserved. He died way too fast. But, what he did to that guy, and then the guy is apparently alive, even though he's brain dead.
Yeah.
Because he's, skinned him alive, all those different ways he's tortured him. It's so disturbing.
Yeah.
And, the horror elements of that, if we were to follow this guy, it is interesting how this it leaves out that whole thing, but all those elements from a different genre are in there, making this it is a genre film, but at the same time it's not. And I think it's a beautiful mixture of terrifying bad things.
Oh yeah.
But you're seeing it from these two guys. You're taking this journey with these detectives instead. I'm kind of glad Kevin Spacey isn't there playing mind games, leaving weird notes the whole way along, because I didn't need to be in his head until the very end, which I think is unique. I think a lot of times they want you to let's figure out the killer, whereas this one is straightforward. Yeah. My dude is doing the 7 deadly sins, which I don't really think about that much in life, although I probably execute at least 4 of them that I counted right.
Yeah. I do. So the other thing I want to talk about is has to do with the crimes or the murders themselves. Pretty much every crime scene you see in excruciating detail.
Mm-hmm.
When they're examining the gluttony guy, he's examined that body for a long time, and then there's the bucket of
fat,
just whatever
vomit,
and everything underneath the table, and then greed. You see a lot of that. The part of this movie that has always been the most disturbing to me, and this is telling about who I am, but also it's such a horrifying. I think the way it's presented in this movie is the most horrifying way it could be presented. Is lust.
Oh my god!
So lust, that is one that we do not see a lot of details of the crime scene. And the way that Fincher chooses to tell that story instead is horrifying, because it's the interrogation of the guy who was forced to kill this woman with the grossest murder weapon ever. It's awful. I don't want to go into a ton of detail there.
Maybe I missed. I'm confused at what.
It was a dildo with a knife. A knife as a dildo, basically. Yeah. Like a strap.
I remember focusing on that, and I was like, I'm confused at how exactly this happened.
Well, because he was then forced to have sex with a prostitute while wearing that, essentially, by Kevin Spacey, who was holding a gun to his head. But
because you don't see her, right?
No, you never see her. You see the room, and her body is completely obscured by Mills and Somerset.
Yeah, it makes sense why it's lust.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And I think that choice is very conscientious because
it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and it makes what is it makes that sexual violence to me. It felt more visceral, hearing the guy talk about it to Somerset, and it's a choice to, like, going back and watching this. I was like, I think I finally clicked with me. I think why he made that choice. You know what I mean? Like, it feels different from all the other crimes, and it's like it has a more emotional impact in a lot of ways. Which also in the last few years, we have all become more conscientious about sexual violence and stuff like that.
Which he makes it more visceral, but like he could have easily just showed a dead, torn apart and murdered, but clearly like a naked female that was destroyed like that, and in many sense of the word, just assaulted.
Yeah, and that like that is like one of those moments of restraint that really, I think, makes that moment more meaningful. And then
it made it painful.
Yeah, it does. It like resonates with a deep emotional pain rather than disgust.
Like, it physically hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good way to describe this movie is disappointing. Like not in the like whole movie aspect. Like the movie was great, but like that's the feeling you feel throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like, oh, we're gonna get him. Oh, I think we're onto something. Nope. Oh, wait, we found his apartment. Nope. Like, and then like, it just blindsides you out of nowhere. He gets out of a cab and walks into the freaking police station.
Right. Yeah.
And then of course the very end. That's the most disappointing, where you realize justice was kind of served, but he won.
Yeah. His plan went.
And so you're always disappointed in every movie that I've seen. Well, not every movie, but there's. Most movies nowadays, you feel so satisfied. Oh, that was such a good ending, and like it was exactly what David wanted. But
first name basis.
We're good friends.
No, you're absolutely right. And like at the end, I said out loud the words that Morgan Freeman then said about how like this is what he wants. If you do this, he wins. Yeah. And maybe it's because I think you've shown me this scene before when we were talking about shooting our own stuff. I think you've actually shown me the stuff that's going on in the field. But I knew it because it's what everyone's thinking, but it's not the wrong thing to put on screen at that time at all time. And I didn't know for sure he was going to shoot him, and I was like, I am sitting here thinking, no, I would want him to hurt more, or I would not want him to win, but I think I would have shot him too, especially because you think of all the bureaucracy of him pleading insanity and maybe getting away alive, which is terrible. What I wonder is, it's not a premeditated, like, in what degree is the murder? Like, what kind of punishment did Brad Pitt? I know I'm not supposed to think about where the story goes, but I want to know how much punishment did he endure? And, like, does this become a famous killer? Like, David Fincher makes another movie called Zodiac, and the Zodiac Killer is a thing that we know. And I wonder if this would become, like, the Seven Deadly Sins, like, if this killer would become famous. I don't think he wanted fame, but he wanted this to be known as someone with a statement and a message that maybe people would think about, almost in a cult leader way.
Yeah.
Like, this very easily could have been a guy who was leading a cult as well. But I don't think he would get famous. But if this happens in our day, probably. Yeah. This kind of thing just goes viral. And so those after effects, I didn't need to spend any more time in this world, but I did wonder about that. So I did not need the sequel called 8, where... it's also a sequel to 8.
We found a new deadly sin. Is the Pope just
a mess? It's the Jewish sins, and there's one for every day.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. That's what Hanukkah's about.
8 Crazy Nights was actually going to be it didn't work out.
It's with Jason.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I do think the other great thing about this movie is the whole third act of this movie. A big chunk of that is them driving in a car with John Doe. Like, it's a long scene, and
but every character's so well drawn in that scene. Brad Pitt's overreacting the way you would expect that kid to react, because he's this hotshot who gets beaten down by this case over and over again, but then he's back to this guy who feels like, I'm in control of the situation, and I'm going to tell you what a horrible person you are, and he's being set up, it, Morgan Freeman knows it, but he doesn't know how to stop it, and it's so good the way it rolls along. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really
also great. In this scene, like we talked about it being like really dark, it's broad daylight, they're in a desert, but it still feels
such a great juxtaposition.
Gloomy. It's like, what is happening here? And also it's not raining. Like it was raining the entire movie, especially when they're outside chasing each other or whatever. And then the only scene where like something really bad is going to happen, it's sunny outside. You're like, it just, I think that aspect makes you feel even more uneasy because something is different, something's off. you probably don't. I don't know. You probably don't notice that it's not raining or the weather changes, but you can sense something is off.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing there is, like, it still maintains this, like, theme of death, though. Because you think about, like, I mean, they are investigating all these murders. You're seeing all these dead bodies in this grimy, rainy city. Mm-hmm. And then it is very sunny, but they're in the middle of the dead. Like, everything around them is dead still. You know what I mean? Like, which is a really interesting thing. Like, it's, I
remember thinking throughout the movie, or especially the first 20 minutes, I was just like, this is so dark. And I know why it's dark, but I wish I could see a little bit better because I was watching in the afternoon and the sun was coming through my windows. I was just like, what a pain. And then, that I didn't really think about till the end. Oh, now we're going to do this where everything is very clear, but the emotion is so dark and so painful to think about.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts before we kind of go to some background?
No, I think I got everything.
Do you have some more notes that you didn't work in?
I mean, I've got some more, like, just kind of information about...
I find this stuff interesting.
The movie. So this movie was nominated for one Oscar that it did not win. It was nominated for film editing.
Interesting.
Really?
Which I think the editing is incredible. I think that's absolutely one of the strengths of this movie. So the highest grossing films this year, Se7en was... number 7 on the list.
No
Conspiracies
way.
begin. So highest grossing to least is Toy Story was number 1. Die Hard with a Vengeance is number 2, which is a good Die Hard. It falls in the camp of good Die Hards. Not great Die Hards.
Does A Good Day to Die Hard?
No, it does not. We'll get
Justin
into that.
Long was not good.
Apollo 13, GoldenEye, Pocahontas, Batman Forever.
Love it. It's terrible. It's so good.
Se7en, Casper, great movie,
No
staple
way.
of my childhood.
Right.
Waterworld came out this year, and Jumanji comes in at number 10.
Waterworld famously lost a ton of money because his floating city died.
Yeah,
Really interesting movie though.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
kind of Mad Max on water.
it is. It absolutely is
Yeah,
Mad
for
Max
sure.
on Water.
Kevin Costner stole.
But yeah, so then the nominees for Best Picture in 1995, the same year that Se7en came out, were Braveheart, Apollo 13, Babe, The Postman, and Sense and Sensibility.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, really, really odd.
I like Apollo
grouping.
13.
Yeah, Apollo 13 is pretty good. That's actually the one that won for editing over.
That's fine,
which is good. It's a well edited movie.
Can my award notes? The 1996 MTV Movie Awards.
Oh, no.
Se7en won Best Movie, Most Desirable Male. Which, by the way, Brad Pitt is a desirable male, but in this movie,
But it was actually Morgan Freeman who won that.
can you get turned on when you're looking at those dead bodies? I couldn't. I tried. Best on-screen duo, they lost, and then Best Villain, Kevin Spacey won. But this was a pretty bang-up year for MTV-type movies. For Best Movie, it beat out Apollo 13, Braveheart, Clueless, and Dangerous Minds.
Oh, it'd be Clueless.
Let's see. This is important, though. Breakthrough Performance That Way was won by George Clooney and From Dusk Till Dawn, fresh off of ER. But Best On-Screen Duo that beat them, very justified, Chris Farley and David Spade and Tommy Boy.
Oh, that's a classic.
Classic.
It's classic.
The thing that I don't agree with, Best Comedic Performance, won by... I don't know why I'm anti-Ace Ventura. I was not in the mood for dumb comedy that year, I guess. He beat Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, Adam Sandler and Happy Gilmore, Alicia Silverstone and Clueless, and Chris Tucker in Friday.
Those are all better than, I think, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm off of my MTV Movie Awards high horse.
And I will say, Clueless, legitimately one of my favorite movies.
you
That's
always tell
a
me that.
heavily influential
stands
movie
I've
out.
for
never
me.
seen Clueless.
Oh, it's incredible.
Oh,
You
we're
need to
doing
watch
it.
it.
We're going to do it.
Speaking of Jim Carrey, have you watched Kidding?
No, I
No, it's heavy
need
on-
to.
heavy on the
I really
rotation.
want
Oh
to.
my goodness!
Is it good?
I've only seen the first episode because
Okay.
they released it free on YouTube.
Oh,
I think
right,
for like
yeah,
a week or
Yeah.
whatever. It yeah.
When I saw it, all I could think of was I saw that Won't You Be My Neighbor documentary about Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is just dark Mr. Rogers.
Basically.
I'm stoked. And they're making Mr. Rogers movie with Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Crazy.
Anyway, back to your notes.
But yeah,
My
okay.
tangent.
So, like I said, Kevin Spacey also won an Oscar this year for Best Supporting Actor in Usual Suspects.
Oh.
And Usual Suspects won the Oscar for Best Writing, which I feel like it's kind of a travesty this was not nominated. Because the guy who wrote this, whose name I
I have it up,
write
actually.
down. Andrew Kevin Walker.
Yes.
Had graduated with a degree in screenwriting, and 6 years later was just working at a record store and wrote Seven. And that's amazing to me. Because this script, I think, is so good.
The only other things you would have heard of that he wrote were 8mm, Sleepy Hollow. He was a producer, or no, he appeared in Fight Club and Panic Room, which are both David Fincher. I didn't know David Fincher did Panic Room. I'm going to have to rewatch that and decide if it's good because he did it, but I don't think so.
I don't love Panic Room.
And then he wrote on Tales from the Crypt, the little TV series.
I didn't know he did Benjamin Button as well.
Yeah.
That one was surprising. I didn't know he did.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about David Fincher is like he's got a pretty wide breadth of stuff, because you look at The Social Network or Benjamin Button versus like A Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Seven, Fight Club, like Gone Girl. Even Gone Girl is almost like the middle road between the two, because it's just got a few like.
It shows you why Social Network's a perfect marriage, because he brings this this psychedelic storytelling to a Sorkin script and a story that's so outside of his realm, but like now those characters make more sense because they're coming from the same mind. Who the rest of those you can feel a common thread, like Zodiac Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl. There's a thread there that makes some sense to me. But and then he does Benjamin Button in this. I think that's beautiful. I think that means that when he's in a little less control, or when maybe it means he's really great at being collaborative, or when he has less control, his influence can really bring great things out of other people. I'm kind of wondering what he has next.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's working on.
I'm going to Googleize it.
But yeah, I will say the opening credits to this movie also, with 9 Inch Nails over them, those opening credits are really cool, and I feel like people have been ripping them off since then. Because I think he also did another really notable opening sequence for House of Cards, which is way more simple. It's just a bunch of shots of Washington, D.C. that are like time-lapsed, and there's really cool music playing over it. And Netflix has now basically done that with every show, and I freaking hate every title sequence because it's so boring, and they're all like 4 minutes long. But the House of Cards one's still good. I still like that one because it actually, and it does like serve a narrative purpose. Like the thing in Seven, you see like Kevin Spacey, you see the close up of the fingers of him like scraping skin and stuff. Like, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, this movie is really crazy and great.
I'd say if you like dark things and noir, like this is a movie for you.
It's really good. There's a really great Every Frame of Painting episode about David Fincher where he breaks down one of the scenes. He breaks down one of the dialogue scenes in early in the movie. That's really cool.
David, coming up, he directed a bunch of Mindhunter, which I watched the first 3 of, and I liked it.
Oh, I love Mindhunter.
I didn't finish it. And then he's doing World War Z 2, reuniting with Brad Pitt.
Really?
World War Z 1, I didn't love it, but I liked it. Like, it was just a very fast-paced zombie movie.
Yeah.
It was pretty fast.
Did you read the book? Is that why you hated it?
Yeah. I love the book.
Because it's not the book. It took the title from the book and took pretty much nothing else, right?
Yeah, the book is incredible because the book
is...
It's
like a survival guide.
It's not even that. It's like a journalist going around and collecting stories post...
I think I'd like that.
Like after the war. And I think it's a movie that's more about like tragedy and like human coping. Like it's really cool.
So they just took his dope title and made it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I actually didn't think it was bad. I'm surprised they're like 10 years later just going to make this sequel now.
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't think it did that well.
I don't even know if it's 10 years, but it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything else about Seven? Any closing thoughts on Seven?
Closing time. Oh, that reminds me. No, but really, the music is pounding.
Yeah, it's good.
Throughout a lot
Howard
of
Shore did the music.
Oh, it did.
Yeah,
and it's I want to say this in a good way. It's almost action movie cliche.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has so many of these beats that. It's like got these low creepy horror moments, but then when it ramps up, like that music almost feels out of place, like in a good way, but it gets you going, and then you hear it and you're like, oh crap, this kind of came out of nowhere. And I think it does a good job because it really keeps you in tune with these characters.
Yeah, for sure.
I think even as gross of a movie it is, like, you don't stop watching.
Yeah.
And that should say something.
Yeah.
And so, keep it up, David. I hope that we talk again soon. If you hear this, give me a call.
Good luck on World War Z
I'll do
2, I
pretty much
guess.
anything with you. You want me to be a grip on World War Z 2? I'll do it.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that. We have to talk. Okay, buddy?
You could do better.
Well, cool. Well, should we just close with some recs?
We're gonna wreck it up.
Recommendos?
Let's wreck it.
I guess I'll start. I guess the thing that I am going to recommend is I have been watching the Larry Sanders Show again, which is amazing, and it is probably one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I think I'm like really on that train because I feel like the Larry Sanders Show is the one that influenced like Arrested Development. I don't think exists without Larry Sanders Show. 30 Rock does not exist without Larry Sanders Show. Community probably doesn't exist without Larry Sanders Show, and even closer to that, Freaks and Geeks does not exist without Larry Sanders Show because Judd Apatow is working.
And that's
with
why
Gary
literally
Shandling
the
on that.
best scene from Freaks and Geeks is him watching the Larry Sanders Show.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and Gary Shandling's amazing. Watch the Gary Shandling documentary on HBO too. It's incredible. It's really good. So that's my recommendation. Watch the Larry Sanders Show. It's real good.
Cool. I'm going to go a very different direction, but so there's this new show that Netflix just dropped this Wednesday called The Bodyguard, and it is starring Richard Madden, who you either know as Robb Stark from Game of Thrones or the Prince from the live-action Cinderella movie. Like, those are the two things most people know from, right?
Interesting.
Anyway, I've only watched one episode. This is the most watched movie like in British history. So it broke all of Downton Abbey's records, but the finale was watched by like 11 million people. There aren't that many people in the United Kingdom. So
how is that possible?
Anyway, it broke all these.
Do you know how many people have watched Seven? 7. Hey, that's it. Only 7 people.
I'm just saying, for the British, this is a very impressive number.
Yeah, no.
So Netflix got the rights. Very smart of them. But yeah, this is like it captured England. It was a big deal. And so this is where people are not making movies that cost $35 million anymore, or even $50 million. Like, it's big or it's a shot in the dark. Mm-hmm. So the opening scene of this pilot is like 25 minutes of a hostage situation that is not your normal hostage situation. And I was like, it's only 6 episodes, which is beautiful. There have been a couple like that on Netflix this year, and I think both are English actually. But I'm really stoked to watch the rest. There are some elements of traditional TV that are like candy to you. There are things that you maybe grew up with in TV that now they try so hard to subvert it, or they're so guilty of it, like it's on CBS. So It's got some great tropes, but at the same time, it really you want to be in this world where it's intense, but it's not too bad. It's really well done so far, and I know people are hyped about it. So like. Maybe it's too cool or maybe it's not cool if you're not into mainstream stuff. But I think there's a reason everyone's talking about it. It did a really good job of building tension. You have a very quiet character, and it reminded me of Drive in that way, where this guy does not want to talk, even though you're seeing everything through his eyes, and that gives the filmmaker a lot of room to tell a lot of story through this guy's facial expressions. And I think that the dude does a really good job. So it's only 6 hours of your life, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm going to watch episode 2 tonight. I'm really into it. It's called, I don't know if it's Bodyguard or The Bodyguard. Has nothing to do with that movie from the 90s where I Will Always Love You with Whitney Houston. But check it out. It's on Netflix, or if you're English, you probably already saw it. And we have a very big English following. Matthew. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, if you're English, go down to your local pub. It's probably on TV.
Oh yeah. Turn off the rugby. Bodyguard is on.
Don't take your tea with you. They've got it there. You can get tea there.
Yeah. I thought you were going to recommend Japanese wrestling. I'm very impressed that you did it.
Oh, no. I've been watching tons of WWE. I watched the all-women's event that was this last Sunday. It was great. There were some fights that were very good. So,
are you going to renew your subscription at the end?
No. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
It's a fascinating world. I like that you're looking at it.
Because I basically, over the last month, I've basically caught up on this last entire year of I've watched most of the pay-per-views, like fast-forwarding through and skipping to to the story bits.
Yeah.
I watch it for the story, guys. But yeah, they've done some really cool stuff. Ronda Rousey is really awesome in WWE. It was a really good move
People
for
thought
her
she
to go to that.
were like, it's different. So I'm like, but she was such a character in UFC already.
Yeah.
It made sense to me. I haven't watched him in a WWE other than like clips on Twitter.
Yeah,
time. Anyway.
but they also did really cool stuff with Charlotte Flair this season. Like that culminated this last week. It was really good. WWE is crazy. It's Shakespeare of our day. Matt, what do you?
But we
recommend?
don't support them because they're going to Saudi Arabia. We're a bunch of journalists
That's true.
killing
Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of
the crown
John Cena and Daniel Bryan that both dropped out.
Women
of that
are
event.
not allowed at the event.
Yeah,
because
it's
they're
bad.
showing ankle.
Yeah.
Anyway,
in light of that, I won't be renewing my. I have paid $0 up to this point, and I will continue to pay $0.
Yeah,
to Vince McMahon.
World Wrestling. I will watch the XFL though. I'm pretty hyped for that.
Sorry, your recommendation,
Matthias.
Well, I've recently been watching Community again, and I cannot push that show enough because it is just so brilliant. It is so good. It's so like meta, but not in an ignorant, annoying way.
Yeah.
Because like they reference that it is meta in the show.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. It's so funny. The writing is brilliant. You get connected with the characters so fast.
Yeah.
Bring it
I
back.
love how when you like start to watch a show over again, you're like, oh, the character development. Like I have to watch season 1 first, and then I have to like wait.
That's
to
how
get
Parks
to the
and
good
Rec
part.
is. It's a beautiful
That
show,
is.
but
No,
season 1's a struggle.
Season 1 is
very
hard.
true, but
Yeah.
it is not the case with Community. Immediately,
Yeah,
you're like,
oh.
yeah, they change. Of course, there's character development, but
I think
like,
the first 2 seasons are the best.
oh, they're
so good.
amazing. They're
By
so good.
episode 2, you have like a pretty clear picture of everyone in that show.
and it's
and
pretty.
it does better.
Yeah, it does what sitcoms do. Like it does it better than most sitcoms. I feel like it's. Oh, man,
I completely agree. So,
I actually this box has
It's an Amazon
Community
box.
on Blu-ray.
Really?
in it, yes.
Don't you already own it?
No, not on Blu-ray. They just released it on Blu-ray. I have
I
not
got
bought
DVD,
any Community.
but I got Blu-ray.
No, I haven't. I
need
haven't.
the Blu-ray DVD.
I have yet to own it, and I'm excited because I want to watch Community with all the commentary, which is the nerdiest shit.
That's true.
But I also got the Batman animated series on Blu-ray.
Which one?
nice. Very
The
good.
90s one
The 90s.
with Kevin
Okay,
Conroy.
that's the
So
one
good.
Yeah.
Still, my favorite Batman movie of all time is Mask of the Phantasm, which is an animated movie that
Wait, it's not Samurai Batman? What was that one that came out last
Batman
year?
Ninja.
Batman
That was
Ninja.
real good too.
It's going to be the next movie coming out starring Batman could be very bad. I'm just putting it out there. Because it was going to be this, it was going to be that, and now who knows?
Yeah. And
We can talk about the state of the DC universe, but I think we do it a lot and it's bad.
Let's do a bonus episode of that. We'll just rip them to shreds. Because they need more
That
people
new
doing
Titans
that.
live action show on their app.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's our
we
cue
need
to
to
go.
cut this
Hey,
off.
my name's Mitchell Marshall. I'm here with Tyler Harris, and thanks for filling in today. I'm sure we're going to be back. I kind of want to watch Clueless with you.
I'm down about
Mr. Matthew Marinos. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we were late to 7. It's a zany 90s movie that holds up and is very unique. What?
7, the zany 90s romp you've been waiting for.
That's right. They should have hired me to promote the film. I would have been like, okay, I'll keep Kevin Spacey out of the marketing.
We have to keep turning away 13-year-olds.
Brad Pitt.
Who are saying that this is going to have MTV's best kiss of the year.
Oh, it's the next Jumanji. This should every 7th year this should get re-released as like a diamond edition. This comes out of the vault. It comes out of the New Line Cinema vault. Everybody go watch this, and then this year it's like Kevin Spacey playing Kevin Spacey. Sorry we were late to 7. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week watching
Face Off.
Face Off, which I've never seen.
Face Off.
It's gonna be great.
Great movie.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
gonna
real
be
excited.
lit. Did you notice how I hit every demographic in my
Yeah,
clothes?
that was
I
very
said
good.
lit,
Very
which I
good.
don't really know how to use.
The advertisers
The
love
stoners
that,
and the
that we
kids
don't
under
have.
12, they got it. We got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been sponsored today by weed. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
See you later, cuties.
I'm so sorry, so sorry. I'm so terribly, terribly sorry. I'm so sorry, so sorry. I'm so terribly, terribly sorry. I'm so...
Thanks for listening to the Rewatchers on the Pod. Next week, we continue with our movie series, and we've got pirates, we've got cursed pig faces, we've got fighter pilots. From Japanese animation legend Hayao Miyazaki, we will be watching Porco Rosso. So do your homework and tune in next week to the Rewatchers on the Pod.